Hello everybody, I'm Renocio, and today I decided to challenge myself by drawing with my non-dominant hand. A couple years ago, I wickedly sprained my right hand, and ever since then, every once in a while I tweak it, and then I can't really use my wrist so much. So I decided that I still wanted to draw. I was gonna try to do it anyway. So I decided, it's been really cold here lately, and I've really been wanting to warm up, and the tub isn't very big, so I can't really get that, the warm bath sort of thing going on. So I decided I was going to draw somebody soaking in a hot tub. Originally, I was planning to do Barclay from the Adventure Zone Amnesty, and I guess it kind of turned out like him. He turned out a little bit less fuzzy than I was kind of going for. My Barclay design is a little bit strange as well. For some reason, the idea of Bigfoot being a big burly hairy guy just didn't register somewhere in my brain. So my Barclay is sort of a long-haired dude with very little facial hair. I gave him a lot of very angular features as well. He's got sort of a long nose and a bit of a long bony face with sharp cheekbones. Drawing with my left hand was exceedingly difficult. I really sort of took my time and tried to push really lightly with the pencil. You can probably see everything's very wiggly and shaky. I didn't have a great idea what I was doing, and I couldn't really get those nice clean lines, so I decided I would just sort of lean into the chaos, sort of appreciate the fact that this was gonna be a bit of a mess. I decided to go over the lines a little bit darker once I had sort of a preliminary sketch going, and then for clarity's sake, because the lines were getting kind of hectic after a while, I went over the ones that I wanted to keep a little bit darker. I also ended up drawing this Barclay with a bit more of a tum than I normally do. He's leaning more into the body type territory that I normally give Duck Newton, but there's nothing wrong with a good tummy. Those are pretty cute, so we're gonna leave it. I mean, not like I'd have much of a choice anyway. I went into this without grabbing an eraser, so I decided about halfway through that, I guess I'm just not erasing any lines. As far as the background goes, I'm not a background person. I'm getting better, but I'm very new to creating environments for characters to be in. I spent all of my time focusing on how to draw people and never really touched on objects or animals or environments. So that's something I'm trying to work on. I'm trying to draw more of that sort of stuff that's difficult, because the more you challenge yourself, the more your skills improve. So as far as inking goes, I used one of my Sakura brush pens. Normally I'd use more of the round tip versions, but I tend to draw really, really small when I'm drawing with my right hand, so I only have the 0.005 through 0.02 scale, which are very, very small and much more precise. At some point while I was inking this, I did try to use, I think, a 0.01, but it just didn't show up on the paper, and it was really hard to control. It made the messiness of working with my left hand all the more obvious. So I stuck with a bigger brush this time for pretty much the entire project. I also forgot when I was inking the left hand that hands have 4 fingers and a thumb, so I just added that little boy in there. Watercolors as well are pretty new to me. I'm working with a watercolor palette of crayons, I think they're called. But I've been pulling the pigment off them using a brush and mixing it in a little recycled pie tin. It was one of those little personal size freezer meals. And now it's my low budget mixing watercolor palette thing. It's probably kind of obvious that I have no idea what I'm doing with watercolors. They're very new to me, but I'm only going to get better by playing with them. It's another one of those challenge yourself things. This is just a layer of challenges. One thing I have noticed about watercolors though is that they're very forgiving. So if you put on a little bit too much pigment in one spot, or you need to move around the pigment that you just, made too dark in one area, it's actually very easy to manipulate it. I am working with a very limited palette of watercolors as well. I think there's like 12 or 15 crayons in the box, and there's only one brown. So a lot of this has been me mixing colors, which again with watercolors is surprisingly easy. Why did I start coloring his shorts like that? What are you doing? So I have to admit, I actually did cheat by accident. I'm still figuring out how long I can record things for and how many times I have to switch out memory cards. I'm working with a very old camera and very outdated memory cards, so they have very small storage space. And in the interim of doing some of this adjustment, I thought, oh, Barclay should have a little bit of a heat blush on his face, like you do when you're sitting in hot water for a long time. And without thinking, I used my right hand and tapped some water on his face and put some diluted red in there. It worked out really well, but I technically failed in using just my left hand. Oops. Also, I definitely had a bit of a giggle when I started coloring the towel on his head. It looks like a little roll of salami. So the cool thing I've discovered about watercolors is that you can make water really easily. If you put actual water on the page and then put some sort of diluted color of whatever you want the liquid to be, it sort of disperses itself and creates a very thin layer. So that's what I did for the hot spring water, just kind of a grayish blue that I sprawled all over the place. For the last little accent bit, I wanted to put some highlights on the waves with a white gel pen. And for whatever reason, even though the paper was dry, the gel pen just wasn't working for me. And I tried this with both my hands, so it wasn't just the bad coordination. I eventually got some color out of it, but not nearly as much as I was kind of hoping for. Once everything was completely dry, I went back over with the white gel pen some more, and then I created some steam lines with some white watercolors on top of the now dry paper. Unfortunately, because I was just sort of doing this as a whatever project, I was using the back of a piece of watercolor paper that I'd already done a whole bunch of watercolors on. So as it turns out, the paper wasn't in good shape, and so everything kind of got weird and blotchy and messed up looking in the morning once everything was dry. So, ooh, good to know. Don't do that again. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, guys. I'll be doing more of this kind of nonsense in the future, so if you liked it, feel free to hit the subscribe button, and I'll catch you next time.